The shot came like thunder from an empty sky. One moment, Commander Thexiel was discussing formation adjustments with his sergeants while studying the tactical displays on his wrist. The next moment, Trooper Mexen simply ceased to exist as a living being. The high-velocity projectile punched through his advanced crystal helmet and destroyed his head completely, sending fragments of exotic alien materials spinning through the air like deadly confetti. The silence that followed lasted perhaps 3 seconds but felt like an eternity to the surviving aliens. Then the jungle erupted in chaos as 23 elite galactic warriors dove for whatever cover they could find. Energy shields flared to life with brilliant flashes of colored light, while sophisticated sensors swept frantically in all directions, searching for the source of the impossible attack. Warning alarms shrieked from multiple devices, creating a symphony of electronic panic. But the sensor readings made absolutely no sense to the alien warriors. There was no energy signature that might indicate a discharged plasma weapon. There was no heat bloom from a fired energy rifle. There was no quantum disturbance that could reveal the position of the shooter. The projectile appeared to have been a primitive solid-state round, but their instruments could not determine where it had come from. Commander Thexiel pressed his crystalline body against a fallen tree trunk while his mind struggled to process what had just happened. His voice cracked with strain as he barked orders into his communication system, demanding reports from his scattered warriors. The calm confidence he had felt just moments before was replaced by something he had never experienced in decades of military service: genuine fear of a technologically inferior enemy. Sergeant Vokhtar's reptilian features had turned a sickly yellow color as he tried to make sense of his sensor readings. The Drakmori warrior had fought in campaigns across 17 star systems and had never encountered a situation like this. Their detection systems could identify the location of a discharged energy weapon from 50 kilometers away. Their thermal imaging could detect the body heat of a living creature through meters of solid rock. Their motion sensors could track the movement of individual insects. The idea that a primitive human with an ancient projectile weapon could remain completely hidden from such advanced technology was not just impossible, it challenged everything the aliens believed about the nature of warfare and technological superiority. Yet the evidence was undeniable. One of their warriors was dead, and they had no idea where the attack had come from. 2 kilometers away, Captain Hyunsu was already moving to his secondary firing position. The moment his shot had been fired, he had begun a careful withdrawal from his concealment, using movement techniques that had been refined through generations of human military experience. His ghillie suit allowed him to flow through the jungle vegetation like a shadow, while his knowledge of local wildlife behavior kept him invisible to even the most sophisticated detection systems. The key to his invisibility was not magic or superior technology, but rather a complete understanding of how the alien sensors functioned. Energy-based detection systems looked for heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions, both of which could be minimized through proper equipment selection and field preparation. Motion detectors identified movement patterns that differed from normal environmental activity, which could be defeated through patience and knowledge of how local animals moved through the forest. Even the quantum signature scanners, that the aliens considered their most advanced technology, could be fooled by someone who understood exactly what they were designed to detect. The scanners looked for artificial materials and energy patterns, but Hyunsu's equipment was made from natural materials or metals that had been treated to match the quantum signatures of local minerals. Humans had been hunting each other with projectile weapons for thousands of years, and during that time they had developed countermeasures for every form of detection technology that existed. The aliens' mistake was assuming that their advanced science made such ancient knowledge obsolete. They had forgotten that warfare was fundamentally about the contest between those who hunt and those who hide. The alien formation was making every tactical error that human military doctrine had identified and cataloged over centuries of combat experience. They clustered together for mutual protection, making themselves vulnerable to area effect weapons. They relied entirely on their technology, instead of using natural terrain features for concealment. Most critically, they were reacting defensively to an attack, instead of aggressively pursuing their attackers. Lieutenant Yuna whispered through the team's communications network from her position in the forest canopy. Her voice was so quiet that it barely registered above the ambient sounds of jungle life, but every member of the human team heard her clearly. She had acquired a second target and was requesting permission to engage. From her elevated position, Minji had a perfect view of the alien defensive formation. Their bright energy shields and glowing equipment made them stand out like beacons against the natural green and brown colors of the forest environment. She could see exactly where each enemy warrior was positioned and could identify the weak points in their hasty defensive arrangement. The aliens were behaving exactly as human psychological warfare specialists had predicted they would when faced with an unexpected threat. They were grouping together for emotional comfort rather than tactical advantage. They were increasing their reliance on technology rather than adapting to the changed circumstances. They were making decisions based on fear and confusion rather than military training and experience. Hyun-soo reached his new firing position and confirmed that the alien formation was positioned exactly where he had calculated they would be. The enemy warriors were predictable because their doctrine was based on technological superiority rather than tactical flexibility. When their technology failed to provide clear answers, they fell back on standard procedures that made them easy to anticipate and counter. Through his rifle scope, he could see the aliens frantically adjusting their sensor arrays and recalibrating their detection systems. They were trying to solve a tactical problem with technical solutions, which was exactly what he had expected them to do. Their training had taught them to trust their equipment above their instincts, and that trust was now working against them. "Take the shot," Hyun-soo authorized, after confirming that Minji had a clear firing solution, and that the rest of the team was in position for the follow-up attacks. The second phase of the demonstration was about to begin. The thunderclap of Minji's rifle echoed through the jungle as her carefully aimed projectile found the one vulnerable spot in another alien warrior's advanced armor. The energy shield flickered and died as the soldier collapsed, sending ripples of panic through the remaining galactic forces. They spun wildly in all directions with weapons raised, but found only empty jungle surrounding them. For the first time in their military careers, these elite warriors were experiencing what it meant to be hunted by creatures that had evolved specifically for that purpose. The galaxy's most advanced detection systems were useless against enemies who had learned to become invisible through skills that predated spaceflight by millions of years. The remaining 21 alien warriors were beginning to understand that their technological superiority meant nothing if they could not find their targets. Their plasma weapons were useless against enemies they could not see. Their energy shields provided no protection against attacks that came without warning from unknown directions. Their sensor arrays were sophisticated, but apparently could not detect the most dangerous predators they had ever encountered. Commander Thexiel tried to re-establish control over his deteriorating situation by ordering his warriors to form defensive squares and activate maximum sensor sweeps, but the jungle had become a maze of deadly possibilities, where every shadow might conceal a human sniper, and every moment of silence could be the calm before another devastating attack. The aliens were learning that there was a difference between being technologically advanced and being militarily superior. They had better equipment than the humans, but the humans understood how to use their environment as a weapon, how to turn their enemy's strength against them, and how to fight, a war that their opponents did not even know they were losing. As the echo of the second shot faded into the green darkness of Verdania Prime, the Galactic Council forces realized that they were no longer participating in a simple demonstration. They were fighting for their lives against an enemy that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere at once. The hunt had truly begun, and the hunters were not who the aliens had expected them to be. Dawn came to Verdania Prime with the sound of strange birds calling from the jungle canopy, and the distant hum of alien technology preparing for battle. The Galactic Council strike team moved through the dense forest like a small army. Their equipment created a constant symphony of electronic sounds as sensors swept the area for any sign of human presence. Commander Thexiel walked at the center of his formation, studying a holographic display that projected from his wrist. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the surrounding jungle with different colors indicating temperature variations, elevation changes, and the locations of all detected life forms. The quantum sensors painted bright dots wherever they found living creatures, but none of the dots appeared to be human-sized. Sergeant Vakhtar reported from his position near the front of the alien formation. His reptilian features were enhanced with cybernetic implants that connected directly to the team's sensor network. His yellow eyes glowed as information flowed directly into his enhanced brain from multiple detection systems. The thermal imaging showed no unusual heat signatures that might indicate human presence. The motion sensors were detecting plenty of activity, but it all appeared to be native wildlife moving through their natural habitat. The quantum signature scanners were identifying various forms of plant and animal life, but nothing that matched human biological markers. The alien force numbered 24 elite warriors, giving them a 4-to-1 advantage over the human team. They moved in a formation that had been tested and proven effective across dozens of different planetary campaigns. Scout units ranged ahead of the main force, while heavy assault troops provided covering fire support. Advanced communication systems kept all units connected through encrypted channels that changed frequency every few seconds. The aliens felt completely confident as they advanced through the jungle. Their energy weapons were fully charged. Their shields projected protective barriers around each warrior, and their sensors provided detailed information about everything in their vicinity. They expected to locate the human team within the first few hours and eliminate them before the sun reached its highest point. What the Galactic forces did not notice was the strange silence that followed in their wake. As their technology hummed and beeped through the forest, the natural sounds of jungle life began to fade away. Birds stopped singing in the trees above them. Insects ceased their constant buzzing. Small animals fled from the advancing formation, and even the whisper of wind through the leaves seemed to grow quieter. This audio shadow should have been a warning sign to any experienced jungle fighter. The absence of natural sounds meant that something was disturbing the normal patterns of forest life. But the aliens relied completely on their electronic instruments and paid no attention to such primitive indicators. They had forgotten that evolution had given many creatures excellent early warning systems that were often more reliable than manufactured sensors. 3 kilometers away from the advancing alien formation, Captain Hyun-Soo lay motionless beneath a carefully constructed blind. His ghillie suit had taken him 3 hours to prepare, with each piece of camouflage selected and positioned to match the specific lighting conditions and plant life of his chosen firing position. The blind itself was built from local materials and designed to look like a natural part of the forest floor. Through his rifle scope, Hyun-Soo could see the alien advance clearly. The enemy formation was moving exactly along the route he had predicted they would choose based on his analysis of their tactical doctrine and the terrain features of the area. His position gave him perfect sight lines to a natural clearing that the aliens would be forced to cross. The quantum detection arrays that the aliens were so proud of worked by identifying artificial materials and energy signatures. But Hyun-Soo's equipment had been specifically chosen and modified to avoid such detection. His rifle was completely mechanical, with no electronic components that might register on enemy sensors. The ammunition used specialized propellants that produced minimal heat signatures and virtually no electromagnetic emissions. His rifle was a masterpiece of human engineering that combined traditional ballistic principles with precision manufacturing techniques. The barrel had been handcrafted and tested to ensure perfect accuracy at extreme ranges. The stock had been shaped to fit his body perfectly, and the trigger had been adjusted to respond to the lightest possible pressure. Through his nearly invisible earpiece, barely audible whispers kept him informed of his team's positions. Lieutenant Yuna was monitoring alien communications from a concealed position that allowed her to intercept and decode their tactical transmissions. She had discovered that the enemy was using standard galactic military protocols that followed predictable patterns. Corporal Minji had taken position in the forest canopy directly above the aliens' likely path. Her ghillie suit and natural camouflage skills made her virtually invisible, even to observers who knew exactly where to look. She had become part of the forest itself, perched motionless among the branches like a predatory bird waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Staff Sergeant Jun-ho was moving parallel to the alien formation, staying just beyond their sensor range, while placing carefully hidden explosive devices along potential escape routes. The aliens advanced. Technology made them predictable because they always chose routes that their sensors indicated were safest. This allowed Jun-ho to anticipate their movements and prepare surprises for them. Sergeant Taemin had positioned himself where he could observe the aliens' rear guard and cut off their retreat when the attack began. His job was to ensure that none of the enemy warriors could escape to report what had happened to their commanders in orbit. The demonstration needed to be complete, and decisive Corporal Hyejin was preparing secondary positions and backup equipment in case the initial attack did not achieve complete success. Her engineering skills allowed her to create weapons and defensive positions from materials that the aliens would never recognize as dangerous. She had turned sections of the jungle into a deadly maze that would trap and confuse any enemies who tried to fight back. Yeon-soo whispered into his communication device that contact would occur in 90 seconds. His voice was barely audible even to himself, but his team received the message and began final preparations for the attack. The alien formation was approaching the killing zone he had selected, which would force them to cluster together, while providing him with clear shots at multiple targets. The clearing ahead was a natural funnel that would compress the alien formation and eliminate their numerical advantage. The trees on both sides created perfect concealment for human fighters, while the open ground in the center would expose the aliens to attack from multiple directions. Their energy shields and advanced armor would provide no protection against carefully aimed shots that exploited the weaknesses in their equipment. Yeon-soo found the rhythm of breathing that marksmen use to ensure perfect accuracy. His heart rate slowed, his muscles relaxed, and his finger moved to the trigger of his rifle. The first shot would announce humanity's presence in the most dramatic way possible. It would also signal the beginning of a demonstration that would change the way the galaxy thought about warfare. The aliens continued their advance completely unaware that they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. Their sensors showed them exactly what they expected to see: a quiet jungle with normal wildlife activity and no signs of human presence. Their confidence remained absolute because their technology had never failed them before. But technology was only as good as the people using it, and the aliens had made the fundamental error of assuming that superior equipment automatically meant superior tactics. They had forgotten that warfare was ultimately a contest between minds, not machines, and that the human mind had been shaped by millions of years of evolution as both predator and prey. The jungle itself seemed to hold its breath as the moment of contact approached. Birds fell silent, insects stopped buzzing, and even the wind seemed to pause. The only sounds were the electronic beeping of alien sensors and the soft footsteps of warriors who believed they were hunting. Rather than being hunted, Yeon-soo's rifle was trained on the lead alien scout, who would be first to enter the killing zone. His breathing was steady. His aim was perfect, and his finger was ready to squeeze the trigger. The shot would come like lightning from a clear sky, sudden, unexpected, and absolutely devastating. The demonstration was about to begin, and the Galactic Council was about to learn their first lesson in the difference between advanced technology and advanced tactics. The humans had not come to hide and survive. They had come to hunt, and they were very, very good at it. In 15 seconds, the galaxy's understanding of human military capabilities would change forever. The laughter would stop, the mockery would end, and a new respect would be born from the sound of a single, precisely aimed shot echoing through the jungle of Verdania Prime. 3 weeks later, the jungle moon of Verdania Prime looked very different than it had before. The Galactic Council forces had arrived and built their base camp in a clearing they had cut from the thick forest. Their buildings were made of shining metal and glass that reflected the sunlight like mirrors. The structures rose high above the jungle floor and were surrounded by energy barriers that glowed with blue light. Automated defense turrets stood guard around the perimeter of the alien base. Each turret was equipped with sensors that could detect movement from great distances and weapons that could destroy targets with pinpoint accuracy. The aliens had also set up communication towers that reached above the forest canopy to maintain contact with their ships in orbit around the planet. Inside the base, Commander Thexial studied holographic displays that showed detailed maps of the surrounding jungle. The displays used different colors to show elevation changes, water sources, and the locations of various plant and animal species. The maps were so detailed that they showed individual trees and marked the exact position of every rock larger than a human head commander. Thexiel was a member of the Helix Empire like Ambassador Vextar. His crystal body reflected the light from the holographic displays as he moved around the command center. He wore crystal armor that was built into his natural body structure and could become invisible at will. The armor also protected him from most forms of attack and enhanced his natural strength and speed. The commander spoke to his assembled team of elite warriors. These were the best fighters from 12 different species, each one chosen for their special skills and combat experience. The team included Drakmori shock troopers whose thick scales could stop most weapons, Zephyrian infiltrators who could stretch their tentacle arms to reach impossible places, Nexus combat units with computer brains that calculated the best tactics instantly, and Granite Folk heavy assault specialists whose stone bodies could absorb tremendous damage. Each alien warrior carried equipment that represented the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Their plasma rifles could burn through solid steel, and their energy shields could deflect any known weapon. Their environmental suits provided life support, communication systems, and sensor arrays that could detect a human heartbeat from over a kilometer away. The suits also regulated body temperature, filtered toxins from the air, and provided enhanced vision in darkness or bright light. Commander Thexiel felt completely confident about the upcoming demonstration. His sensors could track any movement in the jungle. His thermal imaging could see through solid objects, and his quantum detection arrays could identify the molecular structure of anything within their range. The human team would be located and eliminated within hours of the exercise beginning. The alien commander explained the battle plan to his warriors. They would advance through the jungle in a standard formation that had proven successful in dozens of planetary campaigns. Scout units would range ahead of the main force, using their enhanced sensors to locate the human team. Once the humans were found, the aliens would use their superior firepower and technology to achieve a quick and decisive victory. Meanwhile, 50 kilometers away from the alien base, the human team was preparing in a very different way. Staff Sergeant Junho sat beside a small stream, carefully applying dark green and brown paint to his face and hands. The paint was made from natural materials found in the local jungle mixed with mud and plant dyes to create colors that matched the forest environment. Junho worked slowly and methodically, creating irregular patterns that would break up the natural shape of his human features. He had learned this technique during years of service in Earth Special Forces, where camouflage could mean the difference between life and death. The patterns he painted on his skin were not random, but followed specific rules developed through generations of military experience. Corporal Minji worked beside him, weaving local vegetation into her uniform to create what human soldiers called a ghillie suit. She selected each piece of plant material, carefully choosing leaves and branches that matched the specific area where they would be operating. The suit would allow her to blend completely with the jungle environment, becoming invisible to both electronic sensors and natural eyesight. The human team consisted of only 6 people, a number that had caused even more laughter among the alien representatives. When it was announced, Captain Hyun-soo served as team leader and primary sniper. His face was weathered from years of combat experience, and his eyes held the calm focus of someone who had mastered the art of remaining invisible in hostile territory. Lieutenant Yuna handled communications and secondary reconnaissance despite her small size. She was deadly efficient with both technology and traditional weapons. Her knowledge of alien communication systems would allow the human team to intercept and understand enemy transmissions while remaining undetected themselves. Staff Sergeant Junho specialized in close quarters, combat, and demolitions. His experience included urban warfare, jungle fighting, and desert operations. He knew how to use the environment as a weapon and how to create deadly traps from materials that seemed completely harmless. Corporal Minji served as the team's tracker and survival expert. She could read signs in the jungle that others would never notice and could move through dense vegetation without leaving any trace of her passage. Her knowledge of local plants and animals would help the team avoid dangerous creatures while using the jungle's natural sounds to mask their movements. Sergeant Taemin was a former Special Forces operative who had become an instructor in advanced combat techniques. His job was to coordinate close-range attacks and ensure that the team could fight effectively If they were discovered and forced into direct confrontation, Corporal Haye Jin was a military engineer who specialized in creating improvised weapons and defensive positions. She could construct lethal traps from seemingly innocent jungle materials and could disable enemy equipment using techniques that required no advanced technology. The human equipment appeared extremely primitive compared to what the aliens were using. Traditional gunpowder rifles replaced energy weapons, sharp knives replaced plasma cutters, basic rope and climbing gear replaced advanced mobility. Systems' simple first aid supplies replaced automated medical systems, and basic communication devices replaced quantum encrypted networks. What the alien observers failed to understand was that every piece of human equipment had been carefully chosen and tested. The rifles were custom-built precision instruments capable of accurate shots at distances exceeding 2 kilometers. The ammunition was specially designed for maximum stopping power while producing minimal heat signatures that could be detected by enemy sensors. Most importantly, every weapon and piece of equipment represented the final result of thousands of years of human warfare. Each design had been tested in real combat situations and improved through countless battles. The humans were not using primitive technology. They were using proven technology that had been refined through generations of practical experience. Captain Hyunsu's rifle was a masterpiece of human engineering that combined traditional mechanical principles with precision manufacturing. The barrel had been crafted by hand and tested to ensure perfect accuracy, while the stock and trigger mechanism had been adjusted to match his specific physical characteristics. The weapon had no electronic components that could be detected by alien sensors and used specialized ammunition that produced virtually no electromagnetic emissions. As the sun began to set over Verdania Prime, the two forces made their final preparations. The alien team activated their sensor arrays and began running system checks on their advanced equipment. Their base camp glowed with artificial light that could be seen from orbit, while their communication systems maintained constant contact with their support ships. The human team simply melted into the jungle, becoming part of the green darkness that surrounded them. They moved with the patience of hunters who understood that success depended not on superior firepower, but on superior knowledge of their environment. Their equipment was silent. Their movements left no trace, and their presence became undetectable to both electronic sensors and natural observation. The aliens went to sleep in their comfortable base, confident that tomorrow would bring an easy victory that would demonstrate the superiority of galactic civilization. The humans found concealed positions throughout the jungle and began the long, patient wait that would precede their attack. They knew that the real battle would not be won by the side with better technology, but by the side that better understood how to use the jungle itself as a weapon commander. Thexiel reviewed his tactical plans one final time before retiring to his quarters. The holographic displays showed him everything. He thought he needed to know about the terrain, the weather conditions, and the likely positions of his human opponents. His confidence was absolute, because his technology was superior, and his warriors were the best in the galaxy. What he did not know was that 50 kilometers away, 6 humans were already studying his base through telescopic sights. They had identified his communication towers, located his ammunition storage areas, and counted the number of guards at each defensive position. The hunt had already begun, and the aliens had not even realized they were no longer the hunters. The jungle of Verdania Prime settled into the quiet darkness. The giant meeting hall of the Galactic Council stretched high above the floor, like a metal mountain reaching toward fake stars. The walls gleamed with silver light that hurt the eyes of anyone who looked too long at them. 12 different alien races sat in their special chairs, each one built to match their strange bodies and needs. The air buzzed with the sound of translation machines turning alien words into something that all the species could understand. Ambassador Vextar stood at the front of the room. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the metal walls. He was from the Helix Empire, a race of beings that looked like living glass. His voice rang out like bells when he spoke, and today he had something important to discuss. The topic was Earth and the humans who had joined the Galactic Council just 6 months ago. General Korath pushed himself up from his chair. His body was covered in green and brown scales that made him look like a giant lizard, walking on 2 legs. His yellow eyes glowed in the artificial light as he looked around the room at all the other alien representatives. He had fought in wars across 17 different star systems and won them all. His species, the Drakmori, were known throughout the galaxy as the best fighters anyone had ever seen. The general began to speak, and his voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. He told the other aliens about the human military and how weak it was compared to the great armies of the galaxy. The humans still used guns that shot metal bullets instead of energy beams. They painted their faces with green and brown colors and hid behind trees and bushes like children playing games in a park. Their weapons were old and simple, their tactics were from the past, and their technology was thousands of years behind what the other races used. The alien representatives began to laugh at what General Korath was saying. The Zephyrians waved their long arms that looked like octopus tentacles. The Nexus robots made beeping sounds that meant they thought something was funny. Even the granite folk who were made of living stone showed cracks in their faces that meant they were amused. These beings had never seen anything as primitive as human warfare, and they found it very entertaining. Captain Hyun-Soo stood in his assigned spot near the back of the Great Hall. He was a human from Earth, and he represented his planet in these meetings. His face showed no emotion as he listened to the aliens make fun of his species and their way of fighting. His dark eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in every detail. He noticed where the doors were located and how many guards stood at each exit. He saw which aliens were armed and which ones looked weak. These were habits he had learned during his years as a soldier on Earth, and old habits never really go away. Lieutenant Yuna stood beside Captain Hyun-Soo. She was smaller than him, but her eyes were just as sharp and watchful. Her fingers moved in small patterns against her leg that looked random to anyone watching. But Hyun-Soo knew she was using military code to count the security guards and note their positions. She had been a communications expert in the human military, and she was always gathering information even when she seemed to be standing quietly. Counselor Murthan of the Nebula Collective spoke from inside his special suit that kept his gas-like body contained. His voice echoed, strangely as it came through the speakers built into his helmet. He suggested that maybe the council should show the humans what real military power looked like. He said they should have a demonstration to prove how much better galactic technology was compared to human methods. All the other aliens agreed with this idea, and they began to plan a military exercise. The plan was simple. The exercise would take place on Verdania Prime, a planet covered in thick jungle. The human team would use their traditional weapons and camouflage techniques, while a combined force from the Galactic Council would use standard galactic military equipment. This included energy shields that could stop any attack, plasma weapons that could burn through solid metal, thermal vision that could see body heat through walls, motion sensors that could detect the smallest movement, and quantum detection arrays that could find any form of matter within 50 kilometers. The aliens were confident that this would be an easy victory for their side. They had the best technology in the galaxy, while the humans had only primitive tools and ancient tactics. The exercise would prove once and for all that advanced civilization always defeated backward methods. The vote was unanimous, with every alien representative agreeing to the demonstration. Only Earth abstained from voting, which meant they neither agreed nor disagreed. General Korath looked directly at Captain Hyun-Soo with his glowing yellow eyes. The reptilian alien was clearly enjoying this moment. He expected the human to show anger or fear, or at least some sign that he was worried about the upcoming demonstration. But Hyun-Soo simply looked back at him with calm, dark eyes that revealed nothing about what he was thinking. Captain Hyun-Soo finally spoke, and his voice was steady and controlled. He showed no anger at the insults or worry about the challenge ahead. He simply said that Earth accepted the generous offer to demonstrate their military capabilities. He asked when the exercise would begin, and his tone was as calm as if he was asking about the weather. The lack of emotion in his voice somehow made his words more unsettling than any angry outburst would have been. The other aliens in the chamber felt a strange chill when they heard the human speak. There was something in his quiet confidence that they did not expect from a member of such a primitive species. They had expected him to protest the unfair nature of the test, or to make excuses about why his people were not ready for such a demonstration. Instead, He accepted their challenge as if it was exactly what he had been hoping for. Lieutenant Yuna continued her silent counting and observation, while the aliens finalized the details of the military exercise. She noted which species seemed most confident and which ones showed any signs of doubt or concern. Her trained eye caught small details that most people would miss, like which aliens carried personal weapons and which ones relied entirely on their guards for protection. The meeting continued for another hour as the aliens discussed the specific rules and conditions for the demonstration. The human team would be allowed to choose their equipment from standard Earth military supplies, while the galactic forces would use their best available technology. The exercise would last until one side achieved complete victory over the other, or until the humans surrendered, as the session ended and the various alien representatives began to leave the Great Hall. Many of them continued to make jokes about human military capabilities. They talked about how quickly the demonstration would be over and how much the humans would learn about the superiority of galactic technology. Some even began making bets about how long the human team would last before they gave up and asked to be rescued. Captain Yun-Su and Lieutenant Yuna remained in their positions until most of the aliens had left the chamber. Then they walked quietly toward the exit, their footsteps making no sound on the metal floor. Behind them, the Great Hall fell silent, except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of alien voices discussing the upcoming entertainment they expected to enjoy. Neither human spoke as they made their way back to their quarters, but both of them were thinking the same thing. The Galactic Council had just made a very serious mistake. They had confused advanced technology with military superiority, and they had forgotten that sometimes the oldest lessons were still the most dangerous ones. The humans had accepted this challenge not because they were forced to, but because they knew something the aliens did not understand. The demonstration on Verdania Prime would indeed be educational, but not in the way the Galactic Council expected. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth had survived and thrived despite having older technology and simpler methods. They were about to discover that evolution was not just about building better machines, but about developing better ways to use whatever tools were available. As Captain Hyun-Soo prepared for sleep that night, he thought about the jungle world where the demonstration would take place. He had fought in similar environments on Earth, and he knew that thick forests had their own rules and their own advantages. The aliens with their bright energy weapons and glowing equipment would stand out like beacons in the green darkness, while humans who understood camouflage and patience could become invisible. The Galactic Council had laughed at Earth's military methods, but their laughter would not last much longer. Panic spread through the alien formation like wildfire, consuming dry grass as the third and fourth shots rang out in rapid succession. 2 more crystalline warriors fell to the jungle floor, their advanced armor proving completely useless against the precisely placed human projectiles. The remaining galactic forces found themselves trapped in a nightmare scenario where death could come from any direction without warning, and their most sophisticated detection equipment seemed as useful as broken toys. Commander Thexiel's voice cracked with strain as he tried to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his ability to manage. His crystal body was pressed against a large tree trunk, while his tactical displays showed him information that made no sense. The quantum sensors indicated no hostile contacts in the area, yet his warriors were being eliminated with methodical precision by an enemy that appeared to be completely invisible. Form defensive squares. The commander ordered through his communication system. Activate maximum sensor sweeps and prepare for immediate extraction. His confidence had evaporated like morning mist under the jungle sun, replaced by a growing fear that his elite strike team was facing something far beyond their training or experience. But the jungle had become a carefully prepared killing field, where every obvious escape route led directly into another deadly trap. Staff Sergeant Jun-Ho had spent the previous 3 hours placing concealed explosive devices along every path that the aliens might use to retreat from the engagement area. His knowledge of galactic military doctrine allowed him to predict exactly where the enemy would go when they tried to flee. The first group of retreating alien soldiers triggered a hidden mine that Jun-Ho had constructed from materials that would not register on their sensors. The explosion sent fragments of crystalline armor and metallic equipment spinning through the air like a deadly storm of sharp projectiles. The blast also served as a psychological weapon, confirming what the aliens were beginning to suspect, that they were not just being shot by hidden snipers, but were walking through a maze designed specifically to kill them. Lieutenant Yuna had been monitoring the aliens' communications since the moment the first shot was fired. Her analysis revealed information that would have terrified the Galactic forces if they had known what she had discovered. The humans were not simply reacting to alien movements but were predicting them with supernatural accuracy. Every attempt to establish a secure communication channel was being intercepted and decoded. Every tactical decision was being anticipated and countered before it could be implemented. The aliens were fighting an enemy who seemed to know their next move before they made it themselves. Their encrypted communications were being read like an open book. Their standard tactical procedures were being used against them, and their predictable responses to crisis situations were allowing the humans to stay several steps ahead of every decision they made. "Sir, we need immediate orbital support," Sergeant Vakhtar transmitted to the command ship, circling high above Verdania Prime. His reptilian features had turned an even paler shade of yellow as he watched his fellow warriors fall to an enemy that remained completely invisible. The humans are not fighting, according to any recognized tactical doctrine. Our sensors cannot locate them, and our formation is being systematically destroyed. The response from orbit came quickly but offered no real help. Negative on orbital bombardment. This is a demonstration exercise, not a full military engagement. You are authorized to use all available ground-based equipment and tactics, but orbital strikes would invalidate the test parameters. Commander Thexiel wanted to scream that the test parameters had been invalidated the moment. The final attack came at dawn, when the surviving alien forces were at their most vulnerable. Commander Thexiel had spent the night listening to phantom sounds from the jungle while his sensors detected nothing, watching his remaining warriors jump at every movement in the underbrush while their sophisticated equipment failed to provide any useful intelligence. By sunrise, his force had been reduced to 11 survivors, and their morale had collapsed completely. The humans struck from 6 directions simultaneously, using tactics that combined traditional military doctrine with improvised techniques adapted specifically for their alien opponents. Hyunsu's final shot took down the aliens' communications officer, cutting their link to orbital support and trapping them in the jungle with no way to call for extraction. Minji and Hyejin emerged from concealed positions to capture 3 crystalline warriors, whose energy shields had been disabled by carefully placed electromagnetic pulse devices that Yuna had constructed from salvaged alien equipment. But the most devastating aspect of the attack was not the tactical execution, but the psychological impact. When Junho and Taemin appeared from what had seemed like empty jungle, their ghillie suits making them appear to be extensions of the forest itself, the remaining aliens finally understood what they had been fighting against. These humans had not simply hidden from galactic technology. They had become invisible to it through skills and knowledge that predated spaceflight by thousands of years. "Surrender," Hyunsu called out in Galactic Standard, his voice carrying clearly through the morning air as he stepped into view with his rifle trained on Commander Thexiel. "This exercise is concluded." The crystalline commander looked at the human standing before him and felt something that he had never experienced in decades of military service. Genuine fear of a technologically inferior opponent. Hyunsu's equipment was primitive by galactic standards. His weapons were ancient designs that any civilized species had abandoned millennia ago, and his tactics relied on skills that sophisticated warriors should have been able to counter easily. Yet this human had orchestrated the systematic destruction of an elite galactic strike force, while remaining completely undetected by the most advanced sensor systems in known space. "How?" Thexiel asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he lowered his energy weapon in surrender. Hyunsu considered the question seriously before answering. "You assumed that advanced technology automatically made older methods obsolete. But evolution does not work that way. Every new predator creates pressure for prey species to develop new survival techniques. And every new form of detection creates pressure to develop new forms of concealment. Humans have been hunting and being hunted for millions of years. We have learned to be patient, to study our environment, to become part of it rather than trying to dominate it with machinery. The aftermath of the demonstration sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council that continued for months afterward. The official reports documented that a 6-person human team had eliminated or captured a 24-person galactic strike force while suffering 0 casualties themselves. The aliens' advanced sensors, energy shields, plasma weapons, and quantum detection arrays had proven completely ineffective against human camouflage techniques and traditional projectile weapons. But the real impact was psychological rather than tactical. The galactic community had built their military doctrine around the assumption that technological superiority guaranteed victory in any conflict. The idea that primitive techniques could defeat advanced equipment challenged fundamental beliefs about progress, evolution, and the nature of warfare itself. Ambassador Vextar addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council with a humility that would have been unimaginable just weeks before. We have learned that wisdom is not always synonymous with advancement, and that there are forms of knowledge that cannot be replaced by technology. The human species brings to our community not just new perspectives, but proven capabilities that complement our existing strengths. In the months that followed, human military advisors became highly sought after throughout galactic space. The techniques that the Council had mockingly dismissed as primitive games were recognized as sophisticated systems that had been refined through generations of practical application. Camouflage, fieldcraft, marksmanship, and tactical patience were added to military training programs across dozens of species and star systems. But perhaps the most important lesson was philosophical rather than practical. The galaxy learned that true strength came not from having the most advanced equipment, but from understanding how to use whatever tools were available with maximum effectiveness. The humans had not won through superior firepower or defensive technology. They had won through superior knowledge, patience, and the ability to turn their environment into an ally rather than an obstacle. The jungle world of Verdania Prime became a training ground where galactic military forces learned to fight without relying entirely on their sensors and energy weapons. And in the quiet moments between exercises, when the technological noise faded and the natural sounds of the forest returned, many alien warriors began to understand what the humans had known all along. Sometimes the oldest lessons were still the most valuable ones. The Galactic Council never again laughed at human military techniques. They had learned through painful experience that respect must be earned through demonstration, rather than assumed through advancement. And deep in the jungles of a dozen different worlds, human instructors continued teaching the galaxy's warriors that the most sophisticated camouflage was not a product of advanced science, but of ancient wisdom and patient practice.